Moffitt, running fourth out there. He's the defending series champion. He left Hattori Racing and went over to GMS Racing this year to take the seat of Johnny Sauter. Those guys have been putting on some pretty good performance for them, but that's not abnormal for GMS. I think they're really honestly one of the best teams. They reinvest into their teams probably more than many of the other trucks out there outside from maybe a Thor Sport or somebody like that. They're considered excuse me, they're considered one of the top tier teams out there just because of the equipment that they have for them, their partnerships, that they lend out technical and engineering support to other teams, but also the money investment that they continue to put into the series, both in the truck series and now investing into the Xfinity series, which they've done for the last handful or couple of seasons or so. So, for Brett Moffitt, I think he's been running good enough that, we'll see him in the playoffs later on this year. And, maybe he will capture some of that, the biggest thing with Brett Moffitt is last year he struggled a lot, and Hattori Racing didn't have the personnel, didn't have always the funding. They almost missed out on a race last year, and this kind of gives Brett Moffitt a little bit of that buffer to not have to worry so much about going out there and winning every week in and week out, just to continue their team to get to the next race, and eventually, like he did last year, as he won the championship. And I think he defeated all the odds to really. I think he's really more of an old school type race car driver that works on the car, has a bunch of shade tree mechanic friends show up, help you out with the vehicle, and you may win something at your local short track. And I think that's what Hattori Racing has done and what they did last year to put Brad Moffitt both in victory lane and the championship. So, I mean, there's a good group of contenders up at the front right now, and I don't think you can count really any of them out. And as we continue to go through this Triple Truck Challenge, that there's not going to be any invaders from the other series, Xfinity or Cup, that's going to come down either this week at Iowa or next week at Gateway. It just really gives an opportunity for these Truck Series drivers to shine. It gives them an identity of their own, which they've been searching for quite some time. And you're seeing, like last week, for example, in the Truck Series, Greg Biffle, that's been out of a truck for 4 or 5 years. I'm sorry, he's been out of a Cup car for about 3 or 4 or 5 years, been out of a truck for almost a decade or so, and came in with KBM equipment and won last week at Texas. So, we're seeing a varying set of drivers that are going to victory lane, even some drivers that hadn't been in the seat in a couple of years. So I think that's really just, how competitive it is for those couple of coveted spots up at the top of the standings right now.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the Michigan race. Joey Logano gets that win and is really among some historic company, if you will. Logano only trails Richard Petty, Jeff Gordon, Kyle Busch in wins before the age of 30, and his team Penske is locked in a 2-team race with Joe Gibbs Racing on the season. Joey Logano, the real deal this year.
Well, I mean, he was extremely strong. He rolled off from the pole there. There was only a handful of instances where he was, and those were mostly through pit cycles that he wasn't leading last week. He said led something like 140 laps or whatever it was. He was the most dominating car. A lot of the drivers last week said that he was tough to pass, and, I think every driver – these are supposed to be the best drivers in the world, and Martin Truex made a comment about how hard it was not only to pass, but how hard it was for Joey Logano to be passed, and for that, I'm perfectly okay with it. I mean, these drivers aren't supposed to slide over, move out of the way, and just let you cruise on by, and especially if you're racing for the lead or racing for a position that can get you some extra stage points or whatever the case is. These drivers aren't supposed to just move over. And while I think, there's some tweaks that could be made at a place like Michigan, the restarts work good for every time that we did get one. But I think there could be some tweaks later on coming down the line maybe at some point. But again, it was tough to pass, and sometimes being tough to pass is just tough to pass. And as a race car driver, sometimes race car drivers find things to complain about that don't necessarily mean anything. And if Martin Truex Jr. or if any other driver were in that situation where they said, they were leading, and let's say Joe Logano said I couldn't get past him because he was hard to pass. Well, that's just how racing is supposed to be. It's not supposed to be easy, and if it was easy, then everybody can do it. So you're supposed to be one of the best race car drivers in the world, and go out there and show and prove it that you are. And for the dominating factor that Joey Logano, he went out there and he shows that he's one of the best race car drivers in the world, and he's defending his championship from 2018.
Well, absolutely, and let's look at some of the other strong drivers coming out of Michigan. Of course, the race ran on Monday evening because they couldn't get it in on Sunday because of the rain. A two-part question here. First of all, it seemed like, and maybe I'm wrong, but maybe the TV just gave a good perception of it, but it seemed like a lot of fans stuck around. Do you think it's a good thing or a bad thing when they move the races back to another day? Sometimes I would think maybe we go with the points leader and call it a wash, or we have some built-in alternate schedule days. Or maybe that wouldn't be possible because of where the track was. But do you think these rain delays / move the race to the next day is that a good thing, a bad thing? I mean, sometimes it's just completely unavoidable. That's the only time they do it. But just getting your thoughts on that.
It's kind of a double-edged sword, to be honest with you. I think NASCAR does everything that they can to do, and they've said repeatedly they're going to do everything they can to do to get it in on its scheduled day. There's all alternate factors that are going to play into this, and obviously Mother Nature is going to be the biggest one, just because of the nature of what the sport does. It's not like football. You can put a canopy over these big giant facilities and then go run, 40 cars around the track for 3 hours, not expect some, bad ill effects to happen from that. So, not only that, but, to some degree it could be technologically impossible too, just because of the size of these massive facilities. But, for NASCAR to take in and say, okay, look, we're going to do this on a Monday. I know a lot of people complained this past week and says, oh, it's at 5 o'clock. Well, people complain when NASCAR says, hey, we're going to run this race at 11 o'clock on a Monday morning. Well, guess what? Most people are at work and they're not coming back and they're not even going to watch this thing on TV. So they should just be glad that the World Cup is going on and that pushed this race to 5 o'clock, because there was something like an 80% increase or something like that, some like 85% increase over the last time we ran on a Monday at Dover. At Dover, we saw a couple 100,000 people, watch this race at Dover the next day at like midday. And this time, this was right on top of the Daytona 500 back in 2012 that ran on a Monday night. We had like 1.9 million people or something like that actually watched this race on TV. So a lot of these people that complained that it happened at 5 o'clock should just be glad the World Cup came and pushed it back until the time that it did, because it gave more people an opportunity to go and watch this race. But it also gave the people that were, I know it's sometimes, it's hard for people to show up at a 5 o'clock race, and a lot of times they're using the 11, 12 o'clock time schedule because they want people that are around to be able to come and watch the race and then go home at a reasonable time. But There was a lot of people that stuck around. There was a lot of people who watched this 5 o'clock race both on track and through television. So, I think this kind of bolsters the fact of, a lot of people continue to say, well, why don't we have a primetime event? We've got all summer long where we have little competition to go up against. Football isn't going on. Basketball is over with. Hockey is over with. Most of the major sports are over with. We're in the summer series for the baseball, and a lot of times, people are on vacations and stuff like that. I think this gives a changing of an opportunity when we get to like 2021 to say, look, we ran a 5 o'clock race, and I mean, we had a 85% increase. We had almost 2 million people watch this race. Let's do it. Let's do a Monday night race. Let's go against primetime Monday night. I mean, you don't have too many new shows either that you're contending with in the summer either. So most of those shows are a couple months away from coming on TV. So I think there's a lot of factors that play into this. I think it's a good opportunity. There's good and bad, unfortunately, in everything that you do, because then, sure, you may not get the people that show up at the race. You may get a lot of locals, people that are within that demographically what they consider a day's drive, 300 miles or less, show up at the race. You may not have people that are going to drive across the country for an event, but also I think if it's compelling enough, I think if we run this race like a Daytona, if we run like a Darlington on a Monday night, if we run like a Martinsville on a Monday night, make it compelling enough that people are going to want to show up. They can take off. I mean, many people take off the Friday before to go to races. Well, why don't they just take the Monday off instead, or the Monday and Tuesday off instead, and do it that way? I mean, you're just doing it on the back end. It's the front end, but I get it. There's a lot of the factors one way or another, and I know it's kind of a tangent as to the factor whether it's good or bad. And, unfortunately, there's good and there's bad in everything. But I think in this instance, NASCAR had to do what they had to do. And, some of these people that complain, that think they should just, relish in the fact that they actually got to watch the race instead of coming home later on and finding out who's winning because they were at work.
Well, absolutely. And, the problem is what a lot of people don't think is not just the rain, it's the drying of the track that takes some time. And I know they've made great strides in trying to create chemicals and stuff that allow that process to go a little bit faster. I still think, what they should do, Steve, and if we should get in on the ground level of this, because when it happens, it's going to be like the biggest thing ever, and we could just retire on a beach somewhere. So, like in baseball, what they do when it begins to rain, they pull out this automatic tarp. It just pushes out like a pool cover, and it goes over the field, the infield there. So my thinking is we put a tarp all the way around the bottom of the track, and we just push a button, and it just goes across the track. When the rain is done, we pull it back, and it's dry. We get back on the cars. What do you think? We would make a killing.
We might. Actually, might make a kill.
You know how much money we could make with an invention like that? I don't know, man.
Oh, well.
We're wasting our engineering talents. Steve Wilson, Speedway Digest, joins us. Steve, thank you so much for joining us on Father's Day weekend. You got any big plans for you and the fam?
No, not all. Not really.
All right. We have yourself a good only one race to keep track of this week, and that's tonight up in Iowa at the truck race. We appreciate you joining us, and we'll talk with you again soon. Where can people find your work and your masterpieces, sir?
You can find us at Speedway Digest on Twitter, Facebook.com/Speedway Digest and SpeedwayDigest.com.
All right, buddy. We'll talk with you soon. Have yourself a good weekend.
All right. Thank you. You too. Have a good one.
Steve Wilson, Editor-in-Chief, SpeedwayDigest.com, our official NASCAR contributor. Thank you to Matthew Embury. 1 hour in the books. My name's Sean Marquis, Presidente. We're going to get right back here with some World Cup. Speaking of World Cup, some World Cup soccer talk with our good friend of the show, Mr. Sean Horton. Going to be good to catch up with him. We'll be right back right here on the Balance Radio Network. 917-889-8516 is our digits.
Tonight.